Well, good morning to all of you who are here today with us for the June cybersecurity meetup here at Alvarez Technology Group. Um, as always, I am your fearless leader, Luis Alvarez, President and CEO, and with me is our Chief Security Officer, Jeff Dix, and our Senior Cybersecurity Consultant, Anil Melwani. And we're going to take the next 30 minutes to talk about cybersecurity. And in particular, today's topic is ChatGPT and how that fits into the whole cybersecurity space and what it means for us, not just in cybersecurity. We're going to talk a little bit more about business cases and things around how ChatGPT can be used and how it shouldn't be used, and some other stuff like that. Up at the top of your screen, you have a Q&A button. Feel free to use that at any time to ask questions. We'll try to answer as many of those while we're on air. If not, we will get to them afterwards, and be sure to get back to you if we don't get to answer your questions while we're in the meetup today. And we are recording this session, and we'll make that recording available to everybody that registered so that they can review the topic and also share with other folks who may not have been able to attend and they think would be valuable for them to have. So with that, let's talk about ChatGPT and really generative AI in general. So I'll start by giving you a little bit of history because, artificial intelligence, we've been talking about that for years, if not decades. It's been around. This is not something that just popped up out of nowhere. But like all technology, it's one of those things that takes time to develop, and it takes different forms. Different organizations head off in different directions. And the company behind ChatGPT is a company called OpenAI, and they started many years ago as a nonprofit, delving into research around using something called large language models. That is the ability of ingesting a huge amount of data and using that data to make decisions, to teach a computer to make decisions based on all of the information that it can gather, and using huge computing power to be able to do that very fast and very efficiently. Took a lot of money to do that, and they found some early investors and people like Elon Musk and even Microsoft. The company was an early investor, but as a nonprofit, their funding was a little bit limited, and they found that there wasn't a lot of public funding out there or private funding to continue the research to the degree that they needed to. It's very expensive, as you can imagine, to put together the computing power that they need for doing the kind of work that they were doing. So what ended up happening was at some point they decided, we're going to convert to a for-profit enterprise with the idea of monetizing our research and monetizing the discoveries that we make. And as soon as they did that, the money started pouring in particular from Microsoft, because Microsoft saw this as a game changer. The way that they were using generative AI, generative artificial intelligence, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, to really open up the whole concept of AI. Microsoft saw it as a way to incorporate some of this technology later into all of their applications. And as it turns out, that's what they're doing today. So back in November of 2022, just 8 months ago, ChatGPT, the first iteration of what OpenAI wanted to introduce to the public, showed up, and it was, a bombshell, to say the least. It was the fastest growing software application in the world, over 100 million users within the first 2 months.
Wow.
And that's just, that's incredible.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, I remember reading about it at the end of last year, and I'm going, oh, looks pretty interesting. I wonder where this is going to go. And before March, it was already starting to appear in all sorts of different places, and all of us started playing with it. And because they were able to add computing power, like I said, they got a lot of investment dollars from a lot of folks, and that let them add a lot of compute, as we call it, to the back end, which means it improved the algorithm, it improved the ability of ChatGPT to respond to questions. One big limiting factor early on with the early versions of ChatGPT was the fact that they had trained this computing thing, if you will, this OpenAI or rather AI with knowledge only available up to 2001, right? So they had they'd scoured the internet for all of this information, and we're actually going to talk about how they gathered this information a little bit later as well. But they gathered all of this data, all of this information using web crawlers, going through not just web pages, but social media, blog posts, everything that they could get to train the AI how to respond to queries in a very human way. And that's really the game changer from the standpoint of ChatGPT, because all of us have used some form of AI. How many of us have Siri? By show of hands, I can't see your hands, so you don't have to show me. But yes, we use Siri, we use Google, Google's AI, we use many of us use Alexa. I think Alexa of all of them is probably the stupidest one. But anyway, we use a lot of these systems to query, for information. I mean, I use Alexa quite frequently at home when I'm when I'm cooking and I need to convert ounces to grams or something like that. And it's very easy to do. You can just ask it the question and it'll respond. But many times, when you do a query, whether it is verbally through an Alexa or Siri, or even online using Google or Bing or some other search engine, the results you got was a series of websites. You can ask it a question, hey, I want to know, what causes cancer? And you'll get a list of websites that talk about cancer in no particular order. It's just like, here's all the places you can go poke around and discover it. Now, if you ask ChatGPT, tell me what causes cancer, it's going to respond in a very human way. It's going to say, well, cancer is caused by, and then explain it and best it can. And then it will respond. It will give you some citations at the end of that. Originally, ChatGPT was only available directly through OpenAI's webpage. You had to sign up for it, and it was free to some extent, but there was also a paid version if you wanted to have longer and more lengthy queries. You paid basically by the query. You bought tokens and you used up those tokens. Still to this day, that's how it works if you sign up for their service. A lot of companies started to sign up for the service in the back end to incorporate it into their software. So we're starting to see some of those things appear. And then Microsoft took a subset of the GPT-3 engine, which was the latest iteration of the online tool, and incorporated it into Bing. So if you don't want to sign up for ChatGPT directly, you can go to bing.com and click on the chat feature there. It's now publicly available. It was on preview for a long time, but now anybody can use it. And you'll be exposed to ChatGPT, and you can go ahead and play with it. So, Anil, what does ChatGPT stand for exactly?
So, ChatGPT stands for Chat Generative Pretrained Transformer. And that's, geek speak for basically saying that there's an engine behind the system that they called it the transformer. And it's essentially, like you said, a large language model where it can predict what you're saying or understand to an extent what you're saying based on keywords and text that you're giving it, that it can use to scour its own massive database on how to respond. And then, obviously the key thing to note is that it doesn't understand necessarily what it's saying or what you're saying, but it's using analytics to understand the keywords and pull out parts of it and generate responses based on that. So it's not intelligent per se, but it is extremely powerful in the way that it can understand what you're writing and how to give you a response in human-like language.
Yeah, I was playing with it this morning, and everything Anil said is correct. What's cool is I was on this morning and I said, I asked ChatGPT to present the Gettysburg Address in Spanish. Boom, in Spanish. Then I asked it to do it in French. Boom, in French. So it's not just English. It can translate to pretty much, I don't know how many languages, but obviously at least two, and probably many, many more. So I think it's going to change the way that we communicate internationally across the entire world. In that now I have a way to ask, talking to my phone, say, hey, ask a question in English and have it put in any language in the world at any time across any topic. So it's going to be super powerful as far as communication goes.
So you're telling me that Gene Roddenberry predicted ChatGPT as the universal translator? Because I remember that from Star Trek, right? They
Yeah,
build up a little thing and were able to talk to each other.
Exactly.
Actually, one of the languages that ChatGPT will translate to is Klingon. For those of you that are
they have
aficionados of Star Trek, it's available. So it's an interesting story that I recently heard about how they had to ask ChatGPT a different way because there are guardrails that OpenAI has created for ChatGPT. Initially, there were none, so that you might have heard stories of the journalist who engaged in conversations with ChatGPT, and by the end of the conversation, ChatGPT was in love with him and was telling him to divorce his wife and marry him. So they recognized that somehow this could be a runaway train, so they set up some guardrails. So sometimes when you ask ChatGPT to do something or respond to something, it might hesitate because it doesn't fit within its programming parameters. Because at the end of the day, it's still a computer. It's not a human being. It's not warm and fuzzy. If you're feeling down or you're feeling depressed, don't go to ChatGPT and ask it for a diagnosis, because it will give you one probably, but one that is not really based on a whole lot of anything to do with you, just based on all the stuff it knows about on the internet. So if you need help with depression, please see a professional. Don't go to ChatGPT. So speaking of those guardrails, I know there was a lot of concern with the early on with cyber criminals being able to use ChatGPT for nefarious purposes. So can you guys speak to that, and what's the reality? What can it do?
Well, I think that it allows a novice computer person to create phishing emails, which is a big issue still today. Also, somebody with very rudimentary programming skills could probably use ChatGPT and other AIs to develop malware, which is the biggest concern that I have as being a security professional and having to, do my best to protect our clients' networks. I think it's just going to broaden the threat actor field out there, in that there's just going to be a lot more of nefarious activity that's being assisted by artificial intelligence.
Yeah, to expand on that a little bit, you could try and ask it to, write me a phishing email that's going to target a CEO, and will get them likely to click on my link so that I can steal their passwords and then get all their money. And it's going to give you something, but it's not going to be as detailed as you're looking for. Whereas if you looked for something more specific, like, give me, Elon Musk in Mountain View, California's, likes and dislikes, in order for me to spark up a conversation with him when I'm at, a dinner, it will give you a bunch of information based on what it has up to the date that it's got. And the bad guys, the nefarious guys, can use that information to craft something more specific, targeting their target, to target Elon Musk, to get him more likely to click on it, because it will almost have that personal feel, like this person knows me and knows what I'm interested in, and is more likely to then click on the things, trusting the email that they've received.
Yeah, it'll be a great tool to collect information for social engineering, which is, more direct personal contact, like via phone call, trying to, get username and passwords or users to click on links through social engineering. You have, a resource that can give you pretty much everything you need that's known about an individual out there on the internet to prep for that social engineering attack. So it's a lot of security concerns with this new technology.
And when you do ask it to do something nefarious, it will right away give you a policy right at the beginning that says, that this goes against my policy to write anything or to give you anything that could be used maliciously. But, based on that, here's something, so there's always that caveat there at the beginning.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
ways to get around that. We've learned that over time.
There's always a way to get around it.
Yeah.
One of the biggest concerns I think that businesses should have is that, there are going to be tools that are coming by companies like Microsoft and Google and others that will allow you to use generative AI tools, ChatGPT, for example, in a very controlled environment. So for a Microsoft Copilot, which is something that if you're a user of Microsoft 365 or as well previously called Office 365, it's coming to to a desktop near you in the next few months. And what Copilot will allow you to do is use ChatGPT in real time when you're writing a letter, for example, or a proposal. You can do things like, hey, I'm writing a proposal for client A based on the same proposal that I wrote for client B. Can you write it for me and update the dates and the information so that it reflects client A? So it's going to go out and find that proposal that you wrote originally, whether you stored in SharePoint, in OneDrive, or even your own in email, and then take that and rewrite it for you. So you have a draft, and it saves you a ton of time. So you don't have to go back in and copy and paste and do all the work yourself. So that sort of work is great when you're in a controlled environment. Right now, what we're finding is that a lot of people within organizations are taking information, confidential proprietary information of that organization, and trying to use ChatGPT to save time, but they're exposing it in public. Because when you use ChatGPT, whether it's through Bing.com or through OpenAI's website, there's no guarantee of security. In fact, they tell you there's no guarantee of security.
Exactly.
So if you take if you're, let's say, a sales manager in an organization, and you're trying to slice and dice your sales numbers and trying to improve them, at some point you're going to be able to use Copilot in Excel, for example, to do that. But right now you can take all of that proprietary data and say, here's all my sales information, ChatGPT. I'm going to give it to you. Tell me how I can improve my organization. And it will do its best to do that. But you've exposed all that information out to the internet, and it's now become part of the public database that is ChatGPT, and there's no telling who can get access to that, or who will be able to use that information against your organization. So there's some serious concerns right now about the fact that organizations don't have defined policies for how their employees can use, or even if they can use, ChatGPT.
Yeah, there's a lot of organizations out there that are already, sending out disclaimers to their employees that they cannot use ChatGPT without written approval from HR and legal and compliance and a whole bunch of especially in larger organizations, a whole bunch of legal entities that are different departments within the organization saying that you're allowed to use it and for what purposes that you can use it for.
Yeah, and we have somebody mentioned that you can use ChatGPT to write a ChatGPT policy, and I'm sure you can. But
might be a little biased.
Yeah, it might be a little bit. That's a good point. We are drafting a policy that we're going to send out to our clients and recommend that they incorporate into all of their other security policies, whether it's remote access, computer use policies that they have, because it is a real thing, and it's something that it's more difficult to block than you think, because people have their own devices, right? So you may block it on, you can ask me to block it at the firewall within an organization, and we can do that. But I can't stop somebody from pulling up their cell phone, their mobile device, and going to Bing and using it there, because there's no control. I can't control AT&T or Verizon. So it's a real concern that organizations should be aware of and should be planning to do something about.
Absolutely.
So, Anil, you and I were talking earlier about the fact that sometimes ChatGPT lies, but they don't call it a lie. So
They don't call it lies. Yeah, that's good point. So the analyst came up with a term called hallucinations for AI because it matches what would be, human fabrication, as a good way to describe it. Quite often you'll ask ChatGPT a question and it'll just make up the answer based on the information that it's got in its database. Because again, it doesn't really understand what it's telling you. It's just going to tell you something based on what it's got in its own
searches,
database. And the bad guys are leveraging this because when they find, and ChatGPT is very regular with its responses. So if you ask it, like, what is a website that has a demonstration of ransomware? ChatGPT will make up a website that it, based on what it knows, may potentially have an example of ransomware, and it'll give that to the person that asked the question. Well, the bad guys will ask the same question to ChatGPT, and then they'll get this fake website that doesn't exist, and they'll go and create the website and put all of the packages they need on that website in order to deliver a ransomware payload to somebody who's asking that question of ChatGPT and then clicking the link. So that fake website that ChatGPT is putting out there is what we call an artificial intelligence hallucination, and it's a fabric of its imagination, if for lack of a better term. It's not really an imagination, but it's a fabric of the AI's imagination that it delivers to the end user.
And that has posed some problems. There's an infamous story about and actually this just kind of came to a conclusion because there was an attorney that was suing Avianca Airlines, and he seemed to be kind of a lazy attorney, apparently, because his client had experienced some bad thing on Avianca, had sued, and then the lawyers for Avianca came back and said, "Hey, the statute of limitations has expired on this." And so the court responded to the plaintiff's attorney and said, "Well, what do you have to say?" So he went on ChatGPT and he said, "Hey, ChatGPT, find me all evidence of cases where airlines were sued and the statute of limitation was invoked, but it was overturned by the court." And so ChatGPT gave the lawyer a whole list of cases, which then he turned over to the court, which then went to Avianca's attorneys. And Avianca's attorneys specialize in aviation law. They know every case that ever happened that involved an airline, and they had not heard of one of these. So they did some more research. Long story short, it turned out that ChatGPT had lied to the plaintiff's attorney and made up all of the cases.
Hallucinated a whole bunch of legal cases.
And when he actually went back and asked for proof, like, can you give me the records, it made up all the case records of these cases that it cited, including quotes and testimony and all sorts of stuff. So ChatGPT can get very, very elaborate about its lying and hallucinations. So be careful about what you use it for, because it's a great research tool. I use it quite a bit to ask it to do research for me, but I also vet the information that it gives me, either by following up on the citations. It's very good about providing citations for the information that it presents to you, or doing my own research on top of it. But it can be a time saver. And for those folks that are out there that think that ChatGPT will replace people, yeah, there's no doubt. Technology and automation has always replaced people, but I think the reality of the situation is, if you'll be replaced by the person that knows how to use ChatGPT to make your job better. So if you aren't using generative AI technology or ChatGPT to improve what the value that you provide your employer or your place of business, then the smart kid that comes in from college that's been playing with it is going to say, oh yeah, I can do that and more. So the job won't go away. It just is going to be elevated. So the guys who made buggy whips when cars showed up, they lost the buggy whip deal, but they went on to go do something else at a higher value to the organization. So I don't see ChatGPT as a threat to mankind. Maybe it is Skynet, and I'm just being naive, but I do think that it is going to change the way that we do business pretty dramatically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And when you're reviewing what's returned by ChatGPT or any other AI, it's trust but verify, it's a thing from the 80s. And I'll just ask this question to you guys to see if you know, is what happens when you're asking the AI a question? There's got to be conflicting information in the background and in the database. So how does ChatGPT decide what information to present if there's conflicting information in the database? You guys have any idea?
Yeah, actually, that happened to a query that I made of it asking a question. I forget exactly what it was, but it kind of presented both sides. It said, so some people feel this way, but some, other people feel that way. So if there's conflicting information, it will present both of them if you phrase the question correctly. And that's one of the things that people need to understand is the prompts that you provide ChatGPT will be a significant factor for the results that you get. So the more information that you provide in your question or your query, the better the results. So if you ask ChatGPT, what causes cancer, it's going to give you kind of a generic, all over the place question. But if you say, what causes pancreatic cancer in people of Hispanic descent who are over 60 years old, it's going to be very specific in the answer that it gives you, because it now has things it can latch onto to narrow down its response. So another example, by the way, ChatGPT, if you have nothing better to do, you can have all sorts of fun with it all day long because you can ask it all sorts of stuff. But if you're going on a vacation and you're going, let's say, to Europe, and you say, what are the 5 top places I should visit in Europe? It's going to give you the top 5 places based on an aggregate of all the information that it has, TripAdvisor, other things that it can get access to. But if you say, what are the top 5 places that I can go to in Europe that are hot but not humid, that has a really good nightlife, but is suitable for young people? I don't want to hang out with a bunch of old people. It's going to give you a whole different set of results than the first question that you asked. Yeah. So be specific in how you ask the question, and you'll get a more specific answer.
Yeah, so probably as a user of AI, then it's important to learn how the best way to ask questions to get the results that you're looking for. So that's the big learning thing on the human side, is how to formulate those prompts so you get, one, accurate information, two, the information that you're looking for.
Yeah, and we're as we're getting close to wrap up time here, I will also add that ChatGPT is moving beyond just words. If you have the Bing app, for example, as Jeff pointed out earlier, you can talk, you can ask questions. You don't have to type them in. You can use verbal prompts, and it'll respond. But it's now ChatGPT or GPT-4, the GPT-4 engine now incorporates more of a creative process. So images and sound and things like that. So this is where you get into some of the more concerning things around deep fakes, right? The ability of ChatGPT to take a YouTube video. For example, let's say later when this is posted, it captures our faces and our words, and then it creates a new video that uses our images, uses our faces, and is able to put words in our mouth, literally. And that's a big concern that this new version of the GPT engine will be able to create even more havoc, especially as we enter
Election
crazy
season.
season in politics is. Yeah. So it's, that is something that we're going to keep an eye out for, and we'll report back at a later session as that develops more. But if you want to learn more about that, you can go to bing.com/create. And there's a whole place there where you can just ask it to create all sorts of images, and just based on your input. And some of the outputs are really interesting. That's to say the least.
Hey, Louis, I know that we're closing up here, but I did notice some questions in chat. Can we assign somebody to respond to those questions after we're wrapped up here?
Yeah, I know Neil's been got through most of them. I was trying to keep an eye on them and respond to them as they were coming up. And there is a link in there as well, both to the blog from Mike Parks. He's one of our cybersecurity analysts here. And I also sent a link to actually where to sign up for an account with ChatGPT, so people can go in there and play with it at their will.
Excellent. Yeah, I just want to make sure that anybody had questions were taken care of.
Well, thank you all for attending the June cybersecurity meetup. It was a lot of fun and a lot of interaction. I'm glad that we were able to get to all of your questions. And sign up when the next one hits next month. We'll be doing it again in last Thursday of the month in July. So see you then. Thank you, gentlemen. As always, great being with you online. Take care.
All right. See you guys next month.
Bye-bye.